So much hair.
Oh, I love it. Hello, everybody. This is Chaweon again, and I am stoked to have Scarlet Magdalene with me. How cool is that name? She actually is, and I wrote it all down because I'm just like, whoa. She is a polytheist. She was in the Golden Dawn, OTO, and there's like a level 2 or something attached to it. So she's a Blue Star neophyte. I'm so excited to talk about what all that means.
Yes.
And she is and I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but I'll try.
I'll help you if you can.
Chthonioi?
Chthonioi Alexandrian.
Chthonioi Alexandrian. This sounds super Greek and awesome. And she was part of Druid organizations in the past, pan-Indo-European groups. She started off in ceremonial magic, but then she went into traditional pagan witchcraft, which is kind of the opposite of what a lot of women, they do when they start off in magic. So she has a super diverse past in terms of her magicking. She writes amazing articles on... I'm going to totally butcher the name of this website, but is it Pathos or Pathos? It's Pathos, right?
You know, I'm honestly not sure. I've been pronouncing it Pathos, but I could be wrong. But yeah, Pathos Pagan.
Okay, Pathos, yeah. I'll definitely link to those below. There are very practical articles about how she works financial magic, her advice on what to do if you would like your magic to be more effective. And we're talking about not just candle spells, not just intentions, but actually using magic as a science, as a technology. And of course, it's so incredible to talk to another woman who does magic, especially ceremonial magic. So welcome, Scarlet.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay, let's start off with Golden Dawn. What is Golden Dawn?
Right. So, Medic Order of the Golden Dawn, just to briefly cover its history, it's a fairly well-known ceremonial magical order, mostly focused on theurgy, and by theurgy, magic for spiritual purposes.
Is it kind of like a fraternity / sorority for magic? Is that what it is?
That's actually very similar kind of structure. The whole idea of initiating, you're initiating yourself into a body. There's an acceptance period. You do stuff. It's not dissimilar, actually. I think calling it fraternity is actually pretty apt.
So would Golden Dawn be similar to the OTO? What is OTO? How is it similar or dissimilar to Golden Dawn?
It's not a teaching order. It's more of a spiritual organization devoted to the teachings of Crowley. They put on a Gnostic Mass, which is a beautiful rite. They usually hold, you'll have local bodies that hold it for the public. It's absolutely beautiful. It's very, very lovely. If you actually belong to a more structured, more mainstream religion, or have been in the past where you've attended a church, there was a mass, it's not terribly dissimilar, but there's a lot more magical and esoteric symbolism in it. It's very, very beautiful. The OTO, they have their initiations. It has their own alchemy, their own spiritual alchemy, but it's not a teaching order per se. They kind of rely on you to go off and do the thing. It's really about teaching Thelema more than anything else. So,
what is Thelema?
Oh wow, Thelema is this entire philosophy started by Crowley. It's a very Dionysian philosophy, but it's also really a philosophy about basically finding your true will and fulfilling that. Golden Dawn is more, I would say, multi-denominational. But at its inner aura, its core is more of a Rosicrucian style. So while they do have a lot of Christian, Jewish, and pagan elements, I would say Thelema is definitely a lot more unashamedly pagan. When
I think of ceremonial magic, that's one of the things I think of. It's women being used as sort of like, like the naked chick holding like the dagger, sort of like Eyes Wide Shut, and the dudes like in like hoods and robes, like doing some sort of like crazy whatever it is.
May I have the password, please?
Fidelio.
And a lot of women may be really intimidated by that.
When I first joined, I was pretty fresh out of college. I had looked up these groups when I was in college and made up my mind that I was going to try to join one once I got out. And I did. And that was the first Golden Dawn group I belonged to. And it was an interesting experience, to say the least. I discovered that the outer groups, and I attended actual gatherings when I got together with people locally, the gender balance was pretty equal. It's just obviously when it got to leadership, I felt like voices weren't necessarily being heard. So it was this weird sort of dichotomy where you'd go there and you'd see the social and you'd see like the outer body, and there was obviously a relatively good gender split, but the governing of the order as a whole, I noticed that the voices gravitated towards the men.
You mentioned that your main thing is sort of like polytheism and the Hellenistic gods. How did you find all that?
It's kind of funny. It's a combination of personal experience, and I just kind of fell into it. My dad was very accommodating. He was very supportive of me and my spiritual search. He also knew that there was weird stuff going on with me.
Wait, what weird stuff?
Weird stuff going on with me. Basically, long story short, psychic crap runs in my family.
Oh, okay.
And coinciding with around 12, 13 years of age, I found some books he had and things like learning how to see auras, like, doing energy work and this, that, and the other. And I was experimenting with all this stuff, and weird stuff was happening. And my mother realized something was going on, and she has this whole parochial background, so she was kind of freaking out a bit. And my dad had to pull me aside and said, "You're not crazy, you're my daughter." And so he went and talked to me about his experiences. Always had out-of-body experiences, this, that, and the other. Psychic stuff runs in his family. And he started buying me books on magic. And the first book he bought me was Living Wicca by Scott Cunningham. I was 14 years old. And they went on to buy me Wicca Guides for Solid Practitioner, Witchcraft for Today, which is another Cunningham book. He got me Deanne Fortune's Psychic Self-Defense, Michael Harner's Way of the Shaman, and just was very, he said, I just want you to go out and be a good person. In fact, I remember he said to me, if you go in the backyard and you paint rock purple and you tie a pink ribbon around it and you're worshiping, become a better person, I don't care. I really don't care what you do. But if you go to church and you become a hateful person, you become a bigot, you're mean, I'm going to care. Obviously, this is not having a good influence on you. So his concern was just, go and be a good person. I don't care what you do as long as you're a good person. This helps you.
I grew up as a hardcore atheist.
Oh, wow. That's actually how I started out. I started out as an atheist and I went to polytheism.
That's okay. I got to admit that as a recovering atheist, right? Yeah. And I use that word recovering because there's still a strong strain of atheism in me. When I hear stuff like polytheism, I have problems just with accepting that there might be one monotheism.
I actually have a meme, and it's from South Park. And it's a ski instructor meme, the blah, 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 if you do this, you're going to have a bad time. And one of the memes that came up was, if you take the Greek myths literally, you're going to have a bad time. Mm-hmm. They are not meant to be taken literally. I think a lot of stuff gets lost in translation. So I usually tell people, the myths aren't like a bad starting point, but to really genuinely understand the religion, the attitudes towards the gods, the beliefs of the gods, you have to move away from the myths and actually read the writings from people who lived during ancient times. Read Plutarch, read Herodotus, read Euripides, read the plays. Get more into other stuff, other voices.
Do you feel that they are actual intelligent, separate entities, or is it just psychological?
I feel that they're actual, genuinely intelligent entities.
Like, how do you know that they're separate entities?
How do you know? Well, I could get into personal gnosis for that. Okay. I can get into personal experience for that. I could get into personal, shared experiences with others. I can get into theory, which is fantastic. I've had enough experiences with death and the dead to have a sense of, there is definitely something out there. In fact, when I started messing around with psychic stuff, I started having experiences, I started having dreams, I started feeling stuff, like feeling something like large and looming beyond myself, outside myself. And I couldn't put a name to it, didn't know what the heck it was. And I started questioning my atheism really, really hard. I'm like, I don't know what the heck this is, but I don't feel comfortable calling myself an atheist anymore. I feel very uncomfortable. I feel like I may be overlooking some larger reality out there. And I think the idea and the notion of the concept of gods, I think there are definitely a lot of layers to that. I think there's something to be said for the stuff that exists that, where the gods can, essentially govern over the idea, the notions of ideas and archetypes, etc., but they aren't strictly that either. There's what you know, and then there's what you think you know.
We can discuss this ad nauseum, but the point is that there is a gap. There's definitely some sort of gap between what we can measure materialistically and what a lot of people, and obviously all your life, you could feel.
Right.
But there was something beyond just what your five senses could intake. And that makes me wonder, I never had any psychic experiences growing up. Can I magic? I don't think I have any natural abilities.
See, that's the thing. There is natural, and then there's what's taught. And I've actually had conversations with people over this, because I think there's the idea that, if you're born with it, it's just somehow naturally better. And my response to that is no. It has its pluses, and it does have its drawbacks. Part of those drawbacks is, you don't know what it's like on the other side unless you undergo a severe traumatic incident that kind of shuts you down for a while. And then you're like, oh, this is what it's like. Oh no, fuck. Learning how to do it yourself means you know how to do it. You can explain to people how to do it. You could communicate better with other people who have not done it. And I think be able to understand them more and have them understand you more. Part of my struggles growing up was that I was essentially isolated. And I didn't really meet people like me until I knew a handful of people at most in high school. And then I went to college. It was like, oh my goodness, all these people, they're all like me. This is so cool.
Has that happened to you, in your life where your natural abilities either shut down?
Oh yes.
Shut it down.
Super traumatic. Shut down. It was a good couple months. It was not fun at all. It was a pretty freaky experience. I gradually got out of it, but it took a while. And when it was going on, I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is what it's like on the other side. Mm-hmm. I knew I was spoiled. Mm-hmm. Now I really know how spoiled I am. I had no idea how good I had it. I had no idea. So it's given me a greater sense of appreciation, I think. Not that I wasn't appreciative, but now I'm like, whoa. Now I really understand how good I had it.
Some things that maybe you took for granted before, and when it shut down, you're like, holy shit, I had no clue this was not normal.
Yeah, my intuitive faculties, my ability to be able to get stuff weighted in my favor. I know even Jason Miller talks about in his book, I think I've covered it actually in my review in my blog post, but the whole idea of magic being something that essentially changes the odds in your favors, that influences outcomes. It's about influencing. And this was something that I figured out how to do from a relatively early age, I'd say around sometime maybe a few years, coming out of puberty onward. And then just, practice it, got better at it. And when I didn't have that ability anymore, it was weird. One of the best things I learned how to do was how to do the thing, because knowing how to do stuff intuitively, it's kind of hit or miss because you don't know how it works. You're driving the car, you have no idea how the car works. The car breaks down, you don't know why. You just kind of do stuff and you get good results, but it's not the same as knowing how to do the thing, why what you're doing is working, when it doesn't work, why isn't it working? Being able to debug it, troubleshoot it. Equivalent of flat tire, what the heck is it? What's going on? You don't even know that your tire's flat. You just know you're having, ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. And I really think that's the overall difference, like being able to provide any degree of structure that you can be able to repeat. People always recommend, keep a magical journal, write stuff down. I'm like, I hate writing stuff down. But once I started doing that, I'm like, okay, I could kind of understand why people write stuff down, because, it is good to note things. It is good to take note. Okay, what did I do? How was the request worded? Okay. Okay, I see what the problem was. My request could have been worded a lot better. I screwed up there. So like stuff like that, and just like in keeping note of that versus just, blindly going off and just kind of doing some kind of, kind of hodgepodge kind of thing that you can't repeat. You don't know why it's working. When it does work, and you don't know why it's not working, or not working to the extent that you would like it to.
After, like your natural abilities, they kind of shut down for a bit. When you decided to go back into magic, you decided to do the Abramelin Ritual. I'm sure that there's people right now listening being like, Abramelin, right? Like they've never heard of it. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty out there, in terms of rituals you can do. I mean, it's fucking hardcore. And the first time that I heard about it, I was like, oh, what? Like, to me, it was just like, knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel. What is this? I mean, society is so tainted with Judeo-Christian religiousness.
Okay.
That we kind of like take that holy guardian angel thing and we're just like, oh, you mean that little guy who's over here and the devil's here and now you're going to like talk to, that's not it whatsoever.
Some little fluffy dude with cute little wings. And I'm like,
right.
Not quite.
Your blog, it actually was a journal like every day, right? For months that you documented going through this ritual. And I think you're the only female that I know of who's gone through that ritual. I mean, tell us more about what is this Abramelin thing?
I needed to do some positive stuff for myself on a regular basis, and so it helped a lot. And I actually started looking around that time towards going to do the Abramelin, and this is like around 2010. And I forgot for what reason I did not do it that following spring. I don't know. I think I got in my own way. But eventually, I think like around end of 2013, beginning of 2014, I said, you know what? I feel like I need to do this. And basically, I'd heard about the aberration for a few people. I know of one other female who has gone through it. I think she's done it twice, actually. She's tried there's actually two different versions out there for two different translations. One is from McGregor Mathers, and the other one is, hope I don't mispronounce his name, George Den. And each one from different manuscripts, and one is a 6-month operation, and the other is an 18-month operation. I decided to get both of these translations. I read them both. I took notes. I started preparing, getting everything together, and I figured, okay, well, I'm going to do 6 months to start, but I feel like I should leave this open. Like, I should basically say to my angel, if you want me to do this longer, I need to cook a little bit more. I'm going to cook a little bit more. I'm not in a rush. I want to get this done. I want to get this done right.
Why even do this?
People do this for a multitude of different things. I think for some people, the idea is, the idea of theurgy, spiritual magic. Basically, I want to improve myself, not just spiritually, but also magically. I also have the theory that the idea behind this was for people, we had a whole conversation on natural versus taught. There are a couple different ways you can come into becoming open. One is to, the absolute hardest way imaginable, and that's through trauma. It's the fastest way. It's the fast approach. It is the more painful approach. The most gentle approach is, unfortunately, the slowest approach. It's through regular, consistent meditation and study and just opening yourself up gradually. And I think that the Abramelin was designed to basically more or less do just that, so that when you get to the final week, you could be like, okay, so it's triggered, you get all this, like, you get this, you get down and dirty, and you're like, yeah, I gotta do this fasting thing, and, you isolate yourself that entire week, and you're basically putting yourself into a week-long altered state of consciousness. So the idea is, okay, at this point, hopefully this will, after all this preparation, everything I've done, the slow-moving, yada yada, it'll pop me open, pray to my angel, I'll reach my angel, I'll enter into that, essentially that meant that communion, that connection, and that angel will help me with my magic from here on end.
If anybody wants to see like a day-by-day journal, they can go on that website.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep,
that's
it's
what
all tagged, it's all under a category. I've handed out to a lot of people in the past because I think I know of maybe 2 other published diaries out there. When I first decided to do it online, it was for a couple different reasons. One was just I kept seeing so many people, just below the right, just totally out of proportion, just craziness. And I would get people who'd never even read either of the translations trying to tell me my approach was wrong. Like, I'm like, you've never even read the text. How do you even know? Like, they knew nothing about it. They just think they knew. I had people like Abramelin explaining to me. It was just crazy.
Abramelin splain. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. My journal entries, I kept them pretty free from a lot of extreme detail. But there were some, when I say, oh yeah, it went well, that meant I was not in there screaming and freaking out because, you're still going through your day-to-day struggles, you're still going through personal struggles, and it was the ritual itself and the entire process brings a lot of personal issues to work on to the surface, and I had a lot. I had gone through some pretty nasty shit. Doing these small things, these small positive things, day in, day out, the repetition, the constant repetition, I really think essentially, for lack of a better term, rewired my brain and helped me out a lot. I live alone, so doing this ritual wasn't a problem. I actually already had my own temple room space. So having a dedicated space just for entering in, basically being the oratory, just for, entering in, doing the prayers, lighting the incense, lighting the lamp, and, and doing that in the morning, doing it at night. Later on, it's, morning, noon, and night. And of course, I'd be at work, so I would just run into the bathroom, basically, and I would, pray silently in my head. Like, I actually went into a bathroom stall to do this. I would do it in my car in the parking lot. Like, I left it with no excuses.
It's amenable to modern lifestyles, and
yes, it is. I think people are overly intimidated by it because there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, urban legend around it. People have elevated this ritual to the point of ridiculousness. It will make a magician walk on water and turn water into wine simultaneously, so they'll be walking on the wine. It will be vintage wine as they're walking on it. And it's like, no, it's not like this. I mean, back in the day, this ritual was supposed to be the first thing you did as a magician, not the last. So I think a lot of people put it up in the pedestal. They have unreasonable expectations of it. And so they think, oh, it's impossible. I can't possibly do it. I think if you're, there's a couple of conditions I think would make it impossible if you have it, if you've got a family, if you've got kids to take care of, especially if you're a single parent, that might make things a little bit difficult. So in a situation where you've got roommates and they're not exactly, keen on your shit, that might make things difficult. I think certain life circumstances might make things more challenging than others. If you're not able to get your own space, I've talked to people who live in a studio apartment. So okay, well, you can section off, a part with maybe even a curtain or whatever, just as long as it's sectioned off, and the only time you enter it, you're good for that, right? So I've heard of people making amendments that way. I took the no excuses approach. I flat out told my angel, I'm gonna do this to my best of my ability. I'm not gonna get things perfect. If I wait for things to get things perfect, I'm not gonna get it done.
I've heard from many sources that when people do the ritual, their life goes to shit.
That's potentially going to happen regardless. If you do any kind of intense magical work, if you do any magical kind of work whatsoever, you're gonna fuck with shit. The whole thing of magic is you're gonna fuck shit up. Stuff is gonna, stuff's gonna happen. This ritual, if you've got a lot of personal stuff to work through, yeah. If there's stuff in your life that desperately needs to fucking go, and your angel's like, this isn't serving you, it's gonna go. I went through 3 jobs while I had this ritual. And once everything like all like kind of smoothed out afterwards, like that whole like somewhere around like between like 6 and 9 months, and he just came in full blast. I basically landed my dream job, and I've been there for 2.5 years now.
The promised end result is that you will actually have some sort of conversation connection that isn't just like in your mind with
Right.
your guardian angel or whatever vocabulary term you want to use, your higher self, your daemon, or whatever. Did that happen for you
Yes.
immediately?
I don't remember on what day during the final week, because the final week was a blur. I actually journaled it down. I didn't post it online. I kept it to myself, but it's all in my little journal. And I just wrote down everything. When it did happen, it was very intense. I remember the voice was surprisingly clear. Like, I got everything. I got the name. I got the sigil. I did the scrying for that. I had this whole silver platter thing that I scryed into. I got everything. And it was just, it was an incredible experience.
I'm going to guesstimate. Over the centuries, at least a couple 100,000 people have done it. So it's, I'm going to assume, pretty legit. I mean, even from a totally skeptical point of view, if over centuries it's still endured and lots of people have gotten some benefit out of it, there must be something. If there's smoke, there must be some sort of fire. I mean, that's just logical. So then the question is, so you did it. You got in contact with your HGA, like, I know, I'm jealous, right? And also, I feel like it's something that I would like to do, and I think a lot of women would like to do.
Do it.
Yeah, I would love to do it. And it's great to hear that it is definitely something that you can do even if you have a job. It may not be the easiest, but if you have a family, it's not like it's going to be impossible. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult. And I think a lot of women, they are mothers and they do have to take care of families, so that's definitely part of it. I guess for me, it's like one of the things that kind of keeps me away from doing it, again, is a sort of like aura of intimidation. It's like there's a ton of men that I know who have done it.
Yeah.
Not a lot of women. And I'm wondering, like, why that is.
I don't know. I do know that in the original text, they basically say, women shouldn't do this, but if they do, it's all these stipulations and blah, 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 and women shouldn't do magic in general. And it's like, there's a lot of sexism in the original text. You can pretty much toss it out. It's hilarious how the original text is all like, it doesn't matter religion you could be Christian, you could be Jewish, you could be pagan. So it explicitly actually says you could be pagan and do the right. But there's like this weirdness around the gender thing. But unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me. It's a sign of the times. Women definitely were, not seen as being like fully, they were seen as being a lesser human. People fear women doing magic. People fear women doing witchcraft. It's like this whole sense of like women are dangerous. We are dangerous and we must be controlled. And it's just nuttiness, like our vaginas are just terrifying beasts or something that are just gonna like open up the mouth of hell.
I'm just imagining gaping vagina. One of the things I've noticed recently is the concept of witch aesthetic, and it's often used by dudes to, as a pejorative against young women. Who it's kind of like, like at those like Comic-Cons and stuff, there's like girls who love to come in and do cosplay. And there's lots of complaints about dudes saying like, you don't really know the characters. You're just going in because you want attention. You're just like dressing up. I'm just like, so a lot of criticism against young women who are coming in for the aesthetic, who are just into the crystals, Instagram witches of Instagram, all that stuff. I mean, I kind of started out that way. I thought, this is cool.
I see just as many guys doing that too. Like they get all into it.
One of the things that perhaps, people say as a criticism against young women who are into the witch aesthetic, it's like, you want to dress the part, you want to go to the graveyard with a candle, because you saw it in the craft or whatever. But it's like, do you know the technology behind it?
Nobody knows the technology behind it. And it's not just a problem with tradcraft. I've seen it in ceremonial magic groups. People are, I went to this wonderful talk by Jennifer R. and Gavin Bone when I was over at the occult conference over in Glastonbury. Fantastic. And the topic was basically like polarity, and they got into the whole notion of getting involved in energy work and learning how to do the thing. And one of the quotes that stayed with me was, people were driving the magical car, but they didn't know how it worked. And it just kind of hit me that's been my frustration with so many groups. They either do things, either assuming you know how to do the thing, you're either going to pick up it intuitively, either they're not teaching it or they don't know how to teach it. And this is a constant thing. This is a constant thing in so many groups I've been a part of. And very, very few groups I've been in actually took the time to try and teach that and do energy work. Like, there's some magical groups I've been in, they've never actually covered really energy work. Golden Dawn groups I were in, they never really covered it. And I don't think the middle pillar is enough. It's not enough as a ritual. Really good ones that are out there that I personally know of, especially, and I think a lot of people know of, are more along the Eastern philosophy. So is this some kind of like racist element underneath it where we're avoiding doing that because like, oh, we don't want to, do those kind of practices or something. I don't think it's appropriative by any means, but I think, if they have a technology and the technology works and it's going to help you to understand stuff, it's help you how to learn how to do the thing. Learn how to do the thing. I forgot what groups was. I'm like, oh, was it useful to learn energy work? Would it be useful to learn energy work, during magic? And I'm like, yeah, please learn energy work while you're learning magic. It's going to make your life so much, like, I think it's just so foundational.
So once you got in touch with your HGA, how did that change your magic? Like, we're talking about putting yourself into drive again. I mean, were you on super drive after that?
Oh my goodness. Well, not immediately. That's one thing they do not prepare you for. I'd say about a good 6 to 9 months afterwards was this dead quiet, to the point where it felt like I hadn't done the ritual at all, and I was freaking out. And I talked to other people, and apparently there's like a whole like kind of lull afterwards, and some of them are like, well, it's like kind of like your angel kind of goes into hibernation afterwards, and you like, and I'm like, okay. So after freaking out, I'm like, okay, let me just ride this out and just be patient. And I think it was around, it was like around like month 6, 7, or 8 or so that stuff finally started to bubble up to the surface. And at that point, and it just accelerated, like it was insane.
Like how?
And I just, there's definitely a difference in my magic. Communication is easier. Basically, I've discussed on occasion how the whole idea of magic being making a connection and having this communication, and I've compared it with like computers. Like you log it, you make contact with the server, and then there's communication. Like there's like a programming language there, which is why you have to be kind of literal with your spell requests. It's very similar to like programming a computer. It's not unlike that in certain respects, but I found the communication was so much easier. Stuff I used to struggle with. It was like the wheels were greased. I don't have direct contact often. Sometimes they'll talk to me, sometimes they'll tell me stuff. It kind of comes in and out. I have some really funny stories about when he shows up in my dreams, because it's I don't know whether or not he started out as being snarky or he picked up my snarky from me. I've actually compared it to a really kind of a cheesy 80s sci-fi film, Flight of the Navigator.
Anyway.
I am a Trimaxian drone ship from...
Trimaxian?
Affirmative.
Okay, I'll call you Max. It's easier.
Max?
Right.
So I think in certain levels, the HA kind of does that a little bit with you. Like, not necessarily like becomes you or like that, like nothing weird like that. But I think on some levels, they kind of take on certain traits, or like they figure out how to communicate with you, because part of the process is attempting the hell to communicate. And the best illustration I've ever seen with it is another fictional medium, the TV show Supernatural.
Cares. We've talked about this. Personal space. My apologies.
Season 4, when Castiel first shows up. It's an awesome season. He's this angel. He's in a body for the first time. And he's trying to, stuff that we think is intuitive, he's like... And stuff that he thinks is intuitive, we're like, the fuck? Right. So, and then you see that, and you realize, oh, that's why you're having a difficult time communicating. And I think part of the process is figuring out on each end, like, not just you communicating with Angel, but your Angel has to figure out how to communicate with you.
It sounds like this HGA is sort of like that guy who's like, who knows everybody, you know that one guy who's like the perfect
middleman
guy.
Is actually a really good way of putting it. It's that whole sense of the human and the divine. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is, there's all these layers in between. And it's a lot easier to access the layers in between and go there and pass it through versus trying to go all the way up there. Dealing with the divine, they're a big picture. They deal with bigger stuff. You needing to get that parking space immediately so that you're not late for that appointment may not necessarily be known to, be like immediately intuitive to, a god versus say like a go-between.
Okay, now I'm starting to see like where that would be useful, because I know just my role, like I have these two friends, they're in a relationship, but one's Korean, the other one is from Canada, and I'm Korean American, so I often act as the go-between in terms of like, if there's misunderstandings, I'll be like, oh, I think what he really meant was, like I'll try to act as mediator because I understand both cultures, I speak some Korean, I obviously speak English. So whatever's lost in translation, I can sort of provide that link after like we all hang out together. Like my Canadian friend often told me, I didn't see it that way before, but the way that you explained it to me in a way that I could understand, now I get it. Now I understand why he is the way that he is. And so that kind of sounds like what the HGA serves as?
Yes. And of course, part of getting that up and going is that the HGA, you first have to learn how to communicate with.
Right.
And the HGA has to learn how to communicate with you, but once that starts to gel and that process is, is underway, it's, it takes off from there. I'm not going to say that, oh my goodness, it suddenly becomes perfect. I'm not going to say communications are ever perfect. It's an ever evolving process.
I'm super stoked about this because now I'm just like, bing, got it. Like that makes so much sense. Having like that sort of cultural and language translator. Of course, I need to have a relationship. Like it's not like my two friends, the Canadian and the Korean, who like I hang out with. If I didn't know them, I'd just be like, why are you coming to me to chat? It's like we have a relationship and I know both of them. That's why I can serve.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And a huge part of that is establishing that relationship with a being that may or may not have much interaction with humans other than you. You may be that very first contact for your angel.
And your HGA wants to get to know you, right? Wants to hang out with you.
Yeah. As far as I can understand, it is a volunteer gig. No one put up some kind of metaphysical gun to my poor angel's head and said, you have to tolerate this crazy person. And she's a handful. And I actually remember being in the temple room, especially like towards like the third phase of the operation, and saying to things like, I am a pain in the ass. But the good news is I am willing to do the work. I am willing to become less of a pain in the ass. I'm willing to work on my shit. But I am a pain in the ass, and I know this.
You straight up told your HGA, listen, I'm a handful.
Yep.
My bad. Apologize in advance.
I'm a handful. I've got issues. I know it. I'm working on them. And I think that goes a long way. And it's just, dealing with that whole communication thing.
Yeah, I mean, the way that you talk about spirits and a lot of other magic people talk about spirits that I feel like is quite logical and makes perfect sense is that you are developing a relationship with them. It's not like you have to like kiss their feet and be like, oh,
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
it's actually a relationship that's based on respect.
Yes,
And
it is. It is a symbiotic relationship, and
what do they
one thing
get
I've
out of
discovered
it?
is universal is they are willing to work with you if you're willing to do work. Like, you're gonna be sitting on your ass and you're gonna be like, yeah, give me extra fries, and like, and you make promises and you don't keep them, they're not gonna be less willing to work with you. But if you're willing to do the work and you're willing to like be like, yeah, I'm gonna progress, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it as I need, they like that. They'll help you out.
I read at least 2 or 3 articles that you wrote
Okay.
that's about actually doing the work and what that entails. And one of the things that you wrote that I really resonated with was sort of like the idea of just the daily discipline of feeding an altar, of not just calling on the spirits when you need sort of like when you're bored or you need like a favor. Don't be that friend who just calls like somebody out of the blue just because now you broke up with your boyfriend and now you need somebody to talk to. No.
Yeah.
Talk to your friend like a couple times a week, still maintain a relationship. And that's how you build just basically any sort of cool, healthy, respectful bond with anyone, human or spirit.
It's definitely reciprocal. Relationships, I mean, even within my own faith, relationships with the gods are reciprocal. Like the relationship between parents and their grown kids. Like, the notion of going out and doing your thing and doing your best job, and they look down and like, yeah, look at them go, they're doing the thing, I'm so proud. And you're using the gifts that they gave you in order to do that. But if for some reason you do legitimately need help, you can still give them a call and be like, hey. So, and I like to think of my religion as a religion for grown-ups.
One of the things that I also read from you that I also resonated with was that you don't have to use your sexuality as part of your magic.
Being told that like my religion should, my spirituality should basically focus on my being a breeder and be inherent upon physical bits to define me and my gender. Even the whole concept of the maiden mother crone stuff is all based on women's status as a breeder. And it doesn't resonate with me. It's never resonated with me. It just seems like so much emphasis on we breed. And how we are and what we're identified as is being associated with breeding, and this concept of the physical bits mattering to gender. And there's a whole lot of baggage there to unpack, not just from, coming from the perspective of, not wanting to have kids, not being all that interested in sex and relationships, couldn't care less, or even to people coming in who are genderqueer and trans, obviously that's not going to speak to them. So it's really, there's just so much baggage surrounding the notion of just, I think it's part of it is our culture. Let's face it. Our culture has massive fucking issues with gender and sexuality. Hardcore. And that permeates everything. So I can't just say, oh, this is a magic problem. This is I can't. It's just a cultural problem. It's seeped into the traditions that we have and the beginnings of traditions of so many of the groups that we've been a part of. And while it's good to acknowledge our roots and learn about things and why we did them the way we did them, I think it's a good thing for us to evolve.
Tips that you would give to a young woman, whether she's cis female or trans, who's trying to get into ceremonial magic?
I would say don't be intimidated by the crazy amounts of book lists and reading and grimoires. I first started out collecting grimoires when I was in college. That's actually what got me into ceremonial magic. I found this one grimoire which somebody was like, it kind of fell into my lap accidentally. I found it the bookstore didn't even know how they even had it in stock. It just happened to be there, and it was just ridiculously cheap price. It just sold it for like $8 or something. But I knew this guy in my Druid group, and he just kept, he had it on his shelf. Like, don't, he like warned us away from it, and it's dangerous, and da 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 da. And there's like all this scare stuff around us. When I saw it, I was with my friend. I'm looking at her. She's looking at me, and I said, "Well, you know what? Better in my hands than somebody else's." So I just bought the thing. And I remember reading through it, and I found this one spell that I wanted to do, but like I didn't understand how to make it work. I understood that from reading it, there was obviously all these bits and pieces that had expected to me have more knowledge about certain things than I did. So that's actually what made me like look out and join groups during the Golden Dawn. I think it's best to start off like doing a peer exchange, talking with people who have already done this stuff, reading blogs online, reading through rituals online, and get into books, but also figure out basics, like learn basics first, like figure out, things like, just general foundations of magic, like just, get your hands like dirty in that first, because otherwise a lot of the stuff looks really, really intimidating. There's all these crazy sigils. It seems like a lot of memorization. You've got all these names, and it just seems like so complicated. And there's some groups I was in that would just be madly in love for doing rituals for hours on end in the desert heat in these crazy robes, these black robes, near air conditioning, and with the idea of, I guess, the more you suffer, the greater the magic. It doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't have to be that way. So I think the idea is like, don't be intimidated. Talk with people. Like, talk with peers, talk with people who've actually done the stuff. You don't pair your beginning with somebody else's middle. You're going to meet people, and they're like, oh my goodness, like, I've been doing this since I was like 13 years old. Don't compare yourself to me. There's some stuff which I only managed to fully, like, realize and digest over the past, like, 8 years. Or even like the past 3, it's going to be a constant learning, constant growth.
What are 3 songs that you feel describe your magical life, and why?
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually thought of 5.
Okay.
So I'm going to give my top 3 and then give the honorary 2.
Yeah.
One song I would definitely have to say would be Wild Child by the Doors.
Not your mother's or your father's child, you're our child, screaming wild.
Okay.
It's one good one. The other one is Euphoria by Delirium. And another is The Garden by Rush. There's a couple different elements of my practice. One is, you do have the ecstatic experiences. You do have the uplifting, oh my goodness, like the total like awe and joy and wonder. And trying to capture that in a song is often kind of hard. I thought of Steve McQueen by M83. As another excellent one, as a nice good runner-up. And then there's also the necessity of basically that sort of freedom, yet that difficulty in letting go. Because so much of the process, as magicians, like you're like willful and getting it done, but it's a very paradoxical kind of practice because you have to, it's this weird sort of balance, especially when doing magic that I found, between being projective and having that focus, but also at the same time being receptive. And for that reason, I also like Tame Impala's Let It Happen. That's another good one.
Coincidence, but I just did a music reaction video last week with that song exactly.
Tame Impala has a very 70s psychedelic kind of vibe that's modernized into a way that feels really seamless.
Tame it all.
Nice!
Yeah, let it happen. It's great also to hear from somebody who is female, someone I can relate to, that you've done ceremonial magic, you've done things that a lot of women do feel intimidated to try, and you're able to do it. And it wasn't like it was like perfect and it was super easy. I mean, you put in work, and
Yeah.
you know, there's nothing wrong with putting in work. And I think a lot of women, for whatever reason, a lot of magic today tells women, if it's work and it's not pleasurable, then don't do it. Like, it should be super pleasurable. Does your uterus feel great? Does your clitoris tingle? Yeah, like,
No, my uterus does not feel great. It's that time of the month, man.
right. So it's sort of like, I love the idea that it doesn't have to be super like easy and flowy. Sometimes, you know, it's okay to have more of that yang energy and to go forth and to try these things.
And it is paradoxical. You know, how do you be both projective and receptive at the same time? It's like, you know, how do you do that? But so much of magic is that.
It's the crossroads, right? Both figurative and literal. I mean, that's where the magic happens.
That explains why I'm constantly surrounded by all the liminal deities, actually, now that I think about it, like Hermes and Hecate. I do a lot with crossroads deities. I don't know what's up with that.
Well, guys, tell us what you think about ceremonial magic, about whether or not you guys also want to try getting in contact with your HGA. What is it? Knowledge and Conversation? KNC?
Knowledge and Conversation. And the Abramelin is not the only way to do it. It's the most well-known way to doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it does what it's designed to do. There are other ways, other approaches. There are people who have achieved that knowledge and conversation who did not do the Abramelin. Totally legit. It is not the only road. So if you're feeling like for some reason you can't do operation, you have legitimate stuff in the way, you know, research. You know, there's a number of different like texts online. There's some essays, some really good stuff. There's actually an anthology that was put out, the Holy Garden Angel, that I know Rufus Opus was actually a part of that, along with various other people, and they all talk about their experiences. And I managed to get that. I think it was like, so during my second phase, when I was doing the Abramelin, it actually came out while I was doing the Abramelin, and I got the book. So it came in at a good time. But that's another excellent work. I definitely recommend that. Lots of very, very good essays in there. You know, read that for inspiration. So there's more than one way to do it. You might find it challenging, and that's usually what produces the so-called dark nights of the soul, blah, 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 the intense emotional work. You know, it's work. It's all work. It's going to be work no matter what. You choose your work. And sometimes you can't, and you just got to do it. Point is, like, whatever you can do the thing. Like, whatever it is that you can do the thing, and don't be held back by expectations, feelings of it not being good enough. The fact that you're doing something still is greater than zero, no matter what. Just do the thing, get it done.
Take Scarlett's advice. Do the thing.
Do it.
Just do it.
Do it.
Just do it.
Do it. Do it. Do it.
Yeah, we're excited. We're both excited for you to do the thing, right?